Hello everyone, welcome back to the F4L Headquarters Podcast. I am your host with the most, the F4L icon, Sean Jazz Stevens. Thank you very much. Thank you. You are too kind, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, folks, it has been a little while since I've been on the air, and it's been a little while since we've come to the F4L Headquarters Podcast, and I apologize for that. If I'm being honest, and I'm being completely candid, it's not because I have a lack of things to talk about, or I can't come up with, exciting topics of discussion. It's not because I can't share awesome stories. I can clearly do a lot of that. But sometimes it's not about the quantity of what you put out, but the quality, and also getting the feel for this new layout and new software and so forth. And also, if I'm being honest, right now, I'm in the midst of doing some very amazing things that I can't wait to share with you all. Some amazing opportunities and some delightful opportunities to kind of open up and do some really cool things going forward. Stepping back into my filmmaking roots and some of my writing, taking things, a lot of that into play. And I'm really happy to bring those things. But unfortunately, I have to be honest with you guys, several times this week I said I really want to do a podcast, but unfortunately life and just other things have come into play. And it's just sometimes, I think it's kind of knowledge that I am someone who does things kind of into the late hours of the night, and usually I'm pretty pretty much on par with everything. But in preparation for all kinds of amazing things I've got going on and so forth, I have, really made sure a lot of those things are done and taken care of. And so, as much as I don't love to share, stories and inspiration and so forth, I feel like sometimes when it comes to the F4L Headquarters Podcast, I feel like I need to give you guys the best show possible whenever I do one. And if I'm being honest, a few times I feel like at night I'm sometimes rushing to get an episode done, and that's not fair to you guys. But also, it's not fair to people who actually value what we do here, and I don't want to do that. So, let me just tell you a little bit of a few things here. I mean, there are some things definitely I can share with you guys. And there's going to be some things that I have some exciting stuff coming up too. First and foremost, as you guys already know, I had changed providers for my podcast. For a long time, I had Blog Talk Radio, and they did, I never had a bad relationship with them per se. But I did have some connecting issues as far as connecting with guests sometimes, once in a blue moon, seeing how, one of the perks of having, that, platform was that it allowed guests to call in, which was very helpful when I knew I was going to have a variety of people coming on the show. Sometimes we get in life, folks, we get used to doing something, we get used to a format or how we do things, and we don't really look around to see if there's anything better out there. The old philosophy, it's not broken, don't fix it, right? Well, I was kind of in that, and I got to say, a few times I was very frustrated because I would have an interview set up where someone would be coming in from a different country even, or a different time zone, and due to just connection issues or whatever, it was unable to happen, which I myself take very seriously and find incredibly disrespectful. It's not something I'm doing intentionally. It's not something I enjoy, have, because that's not something I'm about. I want to give you guys the best show possible and give you guys the best experience. And when I bring a guest on the show, I want to make sure they're highlighted for being part of this show, because that's important to me too. I bring people on the show that both that are inspirational, but also are people who are real life dream masters and women warriors of the world. So I hope that you guys understand that it's not because I don't want to bring these shows to you or whatever. It's just, I'm getting used to the platform, the new platform. So for those people who know, right now I'm using Spreaker. And I'm getting used to that. And one of the reasons that I was suggested, people wanted me to use Spreaker is because they wanted the option of not only being able to hear my delightful voice and the voice of my guests, but also, to have the option to have video as well to go along with that. So, this is the platform that would allow me to do that. So, because the fans would like it, as well as my guests, I've decided to give this, platform a chance. So it's kind of like, when you're so used to doing something for so long, you want to, really get a feel for what you're doing down pat before you go and, try everything all over again, right? So that's kind of where I'm coming from, and I hope people understand that. But I am very excited, folks, as we have, well, I'm going to tell you, I have a lot of things going on, and I am very excited to share some of those things with you going forward. We're not going to bring some of the things I'm not going to share with you guys at this particular time, because I want to surprise you guys. And I think sometimes these surprises are really good. And I think they're going to be absolutely an opportunity for everyone to see kind of how a dream master goes in the world, puts his plans into motion, and can actually do the things that he does, that being me. The other thing is, I'm very excited as we do have our my next guest coming on the show. And we're very excited because he is someone who's been on the show in the past. And he's coming back on the show. And I got to tell you, when I had the old platform, again, I say the old platform, it's the same F4L headquarters podcast. It's the same person running it. It's the same feel. It's just a different platform and giving more of an opportunity for people who sometimes want to see the person that they're interacting with, which I understand that. But I'm very excited because we're going to be bringing a young man back on the show who's been on the show many times already. He is probably one of the most smartest people I have ever witnessed in modern time. He really does remind myself of me when I was younger. You see, growing up, a lot of people, I think, are kind of have a hard time kind of adapting to these supposed influencers, these supposed young people who want to make a difference in the world. Well, I got to tell you, of all of the people I interact with, and I do interact with quite a few, and I encourage everyone to go after their goals and dreams. But a few years ago, I ran into and I got to know a young man named Jaden Brooks. And Jaden Brooks has, quickly, started out as someone who is huge into fitness, but not from the bodybuilding stance, not something he wanted to do as far as bodybuilding, but more just to stay healthy. And in the time, in our conversations multiple times over the last few years, he's now been part of our F4L, our Icons of the F4L show on YouTube, our wrestling show. He loves that. He's been part of several watch-alongs. He really enjoys it. It's something different and original. But on top of that, he would describe himself as an entrepreneur. Most kids, when they're 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, they're usually riding their bikes, making up havoc. Nowadays, probably, planning what they're going to do next in their next YouTube video or a TikTok video trend. Well, Jaden doesn't do any of that. Jaden is more about doing things in the healthy and trying to help encourage other young people to do the same. He's an entrepreneur that has his own business model, and he likes to help encourage young people to find their voice and find their purpose. And he does have a podcast called Parental. hold on. Let me tell you hold on. I'm going to tell you exactly the name of Jaden's podcast, because I think you should give it a chance, folks. He is a very wise young man, and I think if you gave him a chance, he too, you would quickly find out that he is not just one of these young men who just talks kind of out of nowhere and doesn't know much of life. Jade, on the other hand, I have to say, he has a very good head on his shoulders. He and his younger brother, Lincoln. Anyway, the name of he is the founder of Parenting Possibilities. And he is only 15 years old, ladies and gentlemen. And he is an absolute, he's one of the smartest people I know. He's only 15 years old, and he would give Elon Musk a run for his money as far as intelligence goes. And unlike Elon Musk, Jaden Brooks did everything on his own. He built his own label, his own model. He didn't take it from someone else. He didn't buy into it from somewhere else. He didn't try to take what someone else did and take credit for it. Jaden Brooks is someone who has a mindset of a businessman. 15 years old, going on 35 years old. I'm 42, and he can pretty much keep up with me when it comes to having civilized adult conversations. And you almost forget you're talking to someone who is only 15 years old. He has a wide range of various different topics that he discusses. He does have a few shows on his podcast right now, similar, called the same thing. Hold on one second. I'll tell you the name of this podcast, too. Jaden's coming on the show, by the way, this Tuesday, the 7th, and I'm going to have a time for you guys, hopefully, when time comes. I don't know if I've finalized the time yet with him, but I believe we're shooting for about noontime, I believe, on the 7th, which is this coming Tuesday. So Jaden and his brother now do the podcast together. And I got to say, like I said, it's a pretty decent conversation. He does, you can tell he has a good head on his shoulders. And I see a lot of people on social media who like to give him a hard time because of his age. But let me tell you, don't put it down until you tried it. The name of his podcast is called Limitless Podcast, and it's run by Parenting Possibilities, and it's helping kids crush it. Basically, what the term is, the business logo, and he and his brother are on the Limitless Podcast, folks. You can find that on Spotify and everything else, and really do recommend people check that out, because he's got a really good head on his shoulders, folks. And he's also part of our YouTube. He's going to be part of our YouTube. He's been part of our Icons of the F4L for a number of years now. He's been a singles competitor. He's been a tag team competitor. He's been a champion multiple times over. He had a pretty decent. He's going to be part of a little bit of a storyline we got going on right now, where he's currently, after yesterday's debacle in a match, he's currently going to find and bring in a new tag team partner who's going to help him get some retribution against some TikTokers, of all things. Yeah, and Jaden, like I said, a lot of kids these days, they have their noses in their cell phones, and they're always about doing little dances and doing what everyone else wants them to do. Versus what Jaden does is gives you guys opportunities to grow and become better than that. He doesn't do a lot of social media outside of that. He doesn't believe in the whole bodybuilding thing, but he does believe in doing things that are healthy, like working out. Calisthenics. I gotta say, I've had multiple conversations with Jaden over fitness things. As you guys know, I was heavy into fitness back in the day. I played several sports growing up. I did a lot of lifting myself and whatnot. Was involved with several different sports. Got into pro wrestling at a young age. Competed in mixed martial arts events and things like that. Jaden does boxing himself. And, it's good. We're looking forward to having Jaden on the show on Tuesday, the 7th, coming up, and hearing from him. And you guys can learn a little bit more about what he does, and you guys can have a chance to, hear from the young man himself. And it's going to be it's going to be a great time. And he's going to be the first one we're going to actually do the whole. I did it with the my fellow Monster Maniacs back in the day, and he's going to be my first icon of the F4L who's going to be taking part of this point. And I got to say, a quick thank you to Jaden for really taking some time to be the first person to do this with, and to try out this new model. And it goes to show you how intelligent he is. He knows that sometimes the only way you're going to get through in life, the only way you're going to get your voices out there is by networking and spreading the vibes and spreading your word and get your name out there. That's something I've been trying to point to people, is that, more people that can hear your name, and then when they can link it to you, you can actually grow that way. And I think Jaden gets that, that goes to speak to his intelligence. And I look forward to bringing more people on the show as well. And I do have several people that I'm just waiting on finding time to come in. I know that we're going to try to get Noah the Nightmare Tyndall back on the show. Last time when I had the old platform, we had some connection issues, but he's a brilliant young man over there in Liverpool, England. He is one of the toughest young men out of England. And he's a tremendous young athlete, and his parents I adore. I think they're all delightful people in general. I've actually never had a problem with anybody I've had on the show. I know I'm also planning on bringing back the Mania boys, Henry and Hyro Mania, the Mania boys, who, by the way, quick shout out to them, as over the weekend they went up in rankings again. In martial arts. I think it was jiu-jitsu that they're doing, and in jiu-jitsu they went up to a orange belt, I believe they are now. So congratulations to Hyro and Henry and Hyro Mania, the Mania boys. You guys might remember them from our Icons of the F4L YouTube show as well. We're planning on bringing them back here because there's a lot of things that we can. They can learn. A lot of people can learn a lot from them. And they are tremendous young men who have great work ethic, hard work, and determination. So that's just a few of the people we're planning on. As well, I'm working on bringing back Walker Campbell, our favorite musician, one of our favorite musicians, as well as some new musicians, and some new exciting members to the F4L headquarters. We look forward to bringing those to you very soon. Now, coming up, so you guys know that this week I am going to be swamped, just to fair warn you. As I said, you will hear my delightful voice and see and hear both the podcast and see the podcast this coming Tuesday. Again, I should have a time for you. I believe it is noontime, folks. Jaden likes to get things done, which I appreciate, because I also like to get things done. The early bird gets the worm, so to speak. So Jaden, I think we're going to get him in about noontime or so. I'm just going to let him know that I'm plugging him right now on the podcast. I'm just letting him know that I am plugging him on this show right now. I'm just asking him what time he wanted to do so on the 7th. So I just messaged him because he's, as I'm doing the show and so forth. And if I have an update while I have you guys on the air, I'll give you that. And this is going to speak to his the fact that he wants to get things done and how efficient he is. How many times have you ever sent something to someone in a business sense and then never heard from the persons, or they dragged their feet? Well, Jaden I've known for a little while now, and I have to say that I've never known him not to follow up, and he's a very responsible young man. So I'm going to say before I get done recording this episode, I would have to say that I'm probably going to hear back from him, and I will let you know what time on Tuesday. If not, be watching Instagram, as I will announce it on there. So bittersweet yesterday, as we had our last show of 2000 using the 2022 software for the wrestling show, for the YouTube wrestling show we've been doing, Icons of the F4L on YouTube. It was a tremendous year in 2022. And I got to say, the software that they gave us was much better than 2020, which is the last model that they had. It was an absolute nightmare to try to do a show or build or anything else with the old software. I am eternally grateful that they stepped up their production in the 2022 edition of 2K, as that is what we use to make our shows. And from what it sounds like, 2K23 is going to be quite a great opportunity for us to take this show even bigger. I did do a mini roster reveal on Instagram the other day at the F4L icon, SEANJAZZSTEVENS1. That is my official Instagram page of the Squatters. And on there I had announced some of the roster members of 2023 coming up. Well, some of which have already been part of the show. I think some of it's not a surprise. And some of them who have already been on our show in 2023 are probably not aware. But usually by now I would have had this software. But the software comes out, or the 2K23 game comes out on March 14th. So this weekend I leave for Monster Mania 53, which we'll get into right after this. But when I get back from there on the 14th, I'm going to be picking up the game that I need to update everything. And also I have another project I'm working on that I'm almost wrapped up with now. I've been writing something and it's almost done. I'm very proud of it, and we look forward to revealing what that is, as brilliant minds are coming together to do even bigger things. But in addition to that, basically what yesterday was the last time basically you'll see the old models, the old kind of arenas and all the whole feel of the old show. And the reason that is because we're going to be picking up the new game. I'm going to be picking up the new game on the 14th. And normally for those people who watch our shows on a regular basis, that usually I do shows on the 4th, the 14th, and the 24th of every single month. That way their fans know when they can look forward to seeing the next edition of the show. However, as I revealed on the show, we're also adding in the 9th and the 9th and the 16th of every month as well. So we're adding 2 additional shows, and those shows are specifically for the women warriors of wrestling. We have some of the toughest women alive and some of the best real-life dream warriors we host on our show, and I believe that the women deserve their own kind of a spotlight, if you would, rather than always trying to play fiddle with the guys. So going forward in 2023, we're going to have 2 additional shows for the Dream Warriors on the 9th and the 16th of every month. So now In other words, get your calendars out, folks, because I can tell you when you could look forward to seeing the Dream Masters or the Dream Warriors on Icons of the F4L on YouTube. And those dates going for the rest of this year will be March, or it will be the 4th, the 9th, the 14th, the 16th, and the last one, the 16th, and the 24th of every single month. You could look forward to seeing the Icons of the F4L in some capacity. Now, once in a blue moon, we do have tournaments that will be coming up, and that will be like a weekend thing. And for those shows, those will be, we'll announce when those are going to be. I know we have our Open MMA Grand Prix tournament we're going to have again. We had our first last year. It was a huge success. We had some of the best competitors to compete. Young, old, legends from all different realms. And this year will be no different. We look forward to that. Some of our tough regular roster right now will be taking place in that, along with, in addition to being on a regular format, this is going to be a little bit of a difference than our regularly scheduled shows, as none of our any of our champions who are currently involved or holding a title in some realm, their titles are going to be kind of frozen until the completion of the tournament, as this is its own separate thing. And if you're wondering, well, what does the winner of this tournament get? Well, they get their own custom championship that is awarded to them. It is for only them. It is not on tail, and they become the 2023 Icon of MMA. So that's a pretty big deal to become an icon of MMA, I would say. Last year, we had some of the toughest and some of the best action we had. We had brothers taking on brothers. We had legends taking on, up-and-comers. And in the end, it came down to two of the toughest young men we still have on this roster. And that being Ty the Devil Odell from the Odell Boys and Hyro the Pitbull Mania. That's who it came down to. And the Mania Boys have been a tag team juggernaut since we've had them on our show. And I shouted them out earlier. In real life, they're just as accomplishing in real life as they are on our shows. And by the way, speaking of shout-outs, shout out to Mason the Hammer Adele, who just smashed the records over at the state finals yesterday. Setting records, smashing records, and doing what the Hammer's known for. He brought the Hammer time to the state finals. And so congratulations to Mason the Hammer Adele for showing up and, living up to that name. But going forward, Mason, actually all four of the Adeles will be taking part in that event, as will the Mania Boys. And this will be something that's different from a tag team. This is a singles tournament. It is not a tag team thing. This is an individual, thing. So the Mania Boys, the Adele Boys, and several other people will be involved here. We have a regular roster members. Noah the Nightmare Tyndall will be taking place in that. Will be taking part. Grayson the Super Duck Russell, we know he'll be there. Speedy Easton McDonald, our current Universal Champion, he will be taking part in that event as well, seeing has some Greco-Roman style. Jaden Brooks for his boxing style. Sergey Yokolov, one of our newest Russian friends, will be taking part. Leo the Bull Curtis from the United Kingdom, one of our fan favorites, will also be taking part, as well as a slew of others who are just ready to show the world what they have on our show. And also legends we have going to be taking part. Of course, on our show, we believe once you get to be in the Hall of Fame, you don't have to qualify and you don't have to prove anything anymore. In all honesty, there's some legends that probably feel that they are that meant on our show. Until we put you there, you are still able to still stand on your own. And one of the people who I know is usually part of this event is the son of one of our is the son of one of our first Hall of Famers, and the Dragon Bruce Lee. The Dragon Bruce Lee was in our first Hall of Fame class. His son, the Crow, Brandon Lee, will be taking part in our Heroes Are Remembered but Legends Never Die capacity. He will be taking part. I know that he was part of it last year. Chuck Norris, the living legend himself, believe it or not in the Hall of Fame as of yet. Maybe next year. But the living legend Chuck Norris will be taking part in this year. So will Steven Seagal, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Jason Statham, and a slew of others. Jet Li as well. But then you're going to have, the regular people who are not in the Hall of Fame. Fortunately, this year, Scorpion the Sub-Zero, Fire and Ice, have finally earned their opportunity to show that they are worthy as they are in our Hall of Fame this year. So Sub-Zero and Scorpion are exempt from the tournament. They have done everything that they've had to. So they are not going to be part of it, nor is Bruce Lee. So if you expect to see the Dragon show up, he will not. But of course, we're going to have some UFC greats and legends as well, such as Conor McGregor, Brock Lesnar, Matt Riddle, Dave Batista, and a slew of other real-life MMA competitors, as well as both Pauls, Logan and Jake Paul, are going to take part in that as well. So as you can see, this Open MMA tournament, which will happen in June, will be our first real big tournament. And then in August, usually we have our Open Tag Team tournament that is quite an interesting thing, as that's really a throwback to something my son and I started years ago when we first started Icons of the F4L, or back then it was just Jazz and Sons Dream Masters or Dream Matches. Everyone always used to debate what is the best duo of all time. Well, instead of sitting here talking about it, let's find out. Let's put them all against each other and find out who wins. And that was kind of how the tournament started. So we took all of the well-known best duos and tag teams of all time and had them compete in a multiple-team tournament, which lasted almost all weekend. And that's kind of what we've been doing all year. And that's usually a summertime tournament we usually do, and usually in August. This year will be no different. And of course, we have our biggest, my favorite ones are the Team Warfare events that usually happen in November. Team Warfare is a tournament in a sense where everyone who's involved is entered into a melee into a 8-man tag team action where it's elimination style. Whoever gets eliminated off your team, is eliminated, and whoever goes forward can continue. This year, they're adding in a certain game type that should be very interesting. It would actually add an extra level to this intensity for this tournament, and they call it War Games. And that would be ideal for a great payoff for the entire event as itself. So I do think that's going to be a lot of fun and very, something cool to work with that will add extra element to that alone. I think when it comes to gimmick matches like a War Games or Hell in a Cell or what we call a Cage of Doom, a Melee, which they call a Battle Royal, I think they need to mean something. I think they need to have something special attached to it. I think the problem with modern wrestling is that they get, they gimmick, they build everything around a gimmick, or they build everything around a stipulation, and sometimes the storyline doesn't match up with what the match is. A lot of the times you'll have people who will kind of book a match just because they've seen it many times. It's one of someone's favorite match types someone might have, but it might not fit the bill for a match you have. Like, for example, an Iron Man match or a Last Man Standing match. Really, a Last Man Standing match should be like the end-all, be-all of any kind of a rivalry. Because then there's really no debating anymore, right? That's my opinion. I mean, if you literally beat someone until they cannot get up again, and they can't respond to a 10 count. I think that pretty much, I mean, how much more can you do in a rivalry? I think that one of the things we try to do on our show, Icons of the F4L, is show that you don't need to have the same things over and over again. These things need to be special, and they need to be far away from each other. When I was building the card yesterday, I was actually very upset that there was originally so many multiple man matches on the card. That gets stale, having several, 2 out of 3, 3-on-3s, or 6 3-man dances, 4-ways, and I think that takes away the specialness of what those can be. And everyone does those like they're just going out of style. But what are the purpose? Why do they need that? And that's kind of why I, try to keep something different. I try to make it so it's not the same as what everyone else does in the wrestling world. Which I'll tell you guys, if I had it my way, whenever wrestling's on television, I don't care what company it is, I would be on YouTube doing our shows because I believe in our roster. And I also think that we have the storylines and the story, the people, the real life Dream Masters and Women Warriors who give these people a run for their money. As far as being entertaining, telling stories and whatnot. One of the biggest things that happens in pro wrestling is you'll have a storyline and it'll just either get really stale, people won't care. And one of the things we like to do is listen to our fans. And fans don't want to see the same matches over and over again. When it comes to titles and so forth, we were very strict about those things. We definitely agree that, when it comes to defending your championship, you need to defend your championship. If you're a champion and you're not defending your championship whenever there's a show, then what are you a champion for? The only reason why you won't see a certain champion defended is if it's like a secondary title, and we might, have something for that on the next show. You can guarantee on the next show you'll see that defended, because I think if you're a champion, you should be ready to defend your championship at any given time. That's my honest belief. And I also believe that, you should give everyone an equal opportunity at said championship, because the idea of becoming or getting involved in wrestling is to win championship, earn opportunities. And if that's not your goal, then what are you doing in wrestling? You're definitely not there because you like getting thrown around a ring. You don't like it because you enjoy the atmosphere. You do it for the payoff. You do it for the honor and the dignity that goes along with it. Certainly there are people who believe that, I'll hear people say, well, we didn't give him a title because he didn't need it. Because you say he doesn't need it? Maybe he does think he wants it. Roddy Piper is one of those people that people say, in the WWE, never held anything higher than the Intercontinental Championship. Never got the world title match that he just should have had against Hogan one-on-one. Because I honestly think he would have beaten Hogan. The problem was Hogan didn't want to lose, and they didn't want to take it off of him. So my personal feeling is that, you can't have the same kind of thing over and over again. The biggest thing in the 80s for myself, a lot of people my age in the 80s and the 90s loved Hulk Hogan. And they loved guys like the Ultimate Warrior. That is a stereotype, but that's, come on. I'll be willing to admit that Hogan was super over. Hogan had, he was almost everywhere. You couldn't go anywhere without someone knowing who Hulk Hogan was. Whether they were a wrestling fan or not, they knew who Hulk Hogan was. And the issue with that is just because, from my stance, just because he's in pro wrestling or he's, the biggest thing going doesn't mean he's the best at it. There are definitely a lot of things that made him the way he was. They definitely did a lot of things to protect him as a champion. In the 80s, they had the Big Man Initiative, where they seemed to go out of their way to get the biggest and the baddest for Hulk Hogan to come and just destroy. And then they'd have these big guys in there, and then they wouldn't know what to do with them after Hogan smashed them. It's kind of like, imagine if you would, you wanted to, to get, I don't know, I wouldn't know how to describe it to people outside without people understanding it really, but the analogy would be, giving everyone everything they wanted, giving the fans the match, in feeding the champion all of these big monsters. But after he fed, what do you do with them afterwards? What do you do with the leftovers? They just sit there, and then they wouldn't know what else to do with them because the biggest champion already made sure they know that they're not as good as being the champion. That kind of squashes the guy that you just made him be a monster. He's a monster until he comes to Hulk Hogan. And then what does that say about people after them? The monster could beat everyone but Hulk Hogan. And if you watched, after you got done with that certain program, whether it be Earthquake, Andre the Giant, King Kong Bundy, Big John Studd, Kamala, the list goes on of these big men that they brought in for Hogan to basically just destroy. And then once he destroyed them, what happened to them? Earthquake became a tag team guy with Typhoon, part of the Natural Disasters. They were a decent tag team. They had tag team titles, I believe. But, was he any bigger than he was when he first started against the monster threat that was him against Hogan? And did he know that he was being the Natural Disasters, no offense to the Earthquake, John Tenta was a very talented man. For the size that he was, to move around the ring like he did is absolutely incredible. His mindset, he's also one of the nicest people you'll ever meet as well. That's from many sources that have talked about what it was like to meet John Tenta or Earthquake. His longtime partner, Typhoon, Tugboat, or he is someone who you can always see here and there. He still does a lot of these shows and things like that, and he's another one of these guys they brought in for Hogan just to destroy. And I give a lot of credit to him because he's still out there and he's still doing his thing, and all of the interactions he's had, and he was teamed up with Earthquake. They became the Natural Disasters. Earthquake, the Canadian Earthquake was the original term for John Tenta, and then when the other individual, who was Tugboat, went from Tugboat to Typhoon, which makes sense because he's in the water still. The Natural Disasters, get the gimmick? There you go. That's a pretty cool thing because they're both big guys, and that's a big threat. But Andre the Giant, probably one of the biggest names in pro wrestling ever history, the legitimate Giant. A lot of people talk about him in the past. Just recently they had a program where they talked about Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan, the rivalry, the main event at WrestleMania 3. What would happen when the immovable object met the irresistible force? It was billed as this big, larger-than-life main event. And as much as I might not be a fan of Hulk Hogan's work in the ring or how he does his politics or whatever, I still can't not take away the fact that if it wasn't for Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant WrestleMania 3, and for them getting wrestling to what that was at that time, and for Vince McMahon, let's give him the credit for bringing WrestleMania to the whole world to be kind of a pop culture phenomenon. If it wasn't for all of those key things, wrestling probably today wouldn't be a thing. And I think a lot of people today are quick to overlook a lot of those things and overlook the negative shadows that follow around someone. Because look, I might not be a fan of Hulk Hogan's personal life. I might not be a fan of his work in the ring. But I'm not going to be blind and say I didn't see the energy or feel the energy from the crowd of people who did like Hulk Hogan. See, I believe, just like anything else, if you like someone, cheer for that someone. If you don't like someone, boo someone. The problem is today we have people people don't care about one way or the other, and that's the issue. In the 80s, or in those days when you had Hulk Hogan, and you had a guy like Andre the Giant, you kind of, as a fan, growing up, you could see the person who you wanted to boo and cheer. I'll be honest with you, if I was, a little older, I probably would have cheered for Andre the Giant back then. But back then, I'll be honest with you guys, I wasn't interested in either one. I've told this story before, and I'm going to tell it again, because I think it's important to really note. And also, I want to pay tribute to someone who we just lost in the wrestling world. And I know that I did, shout him out a long time ago, and I did talk about it back when. Not long ago, we lost in the wrestling world a legend, Leaping Lenny Poffo, or Lenny Poffo in general. But when I was introduced to him, he was Leaping Lenny Poffo. And I talk about my very first time seeing a live wrestling match as a little boy. It was in 1986 at the old Boston Garden. I remember everything. I don't remember all of the mid-card matches, if I'm being honest. I remember there was a 2 out of 3 fall match with, I think there was the Brain Busters and the Hart Foundation, I want to say. But Bobby the Brain Heenan wasn't there, nor was the other manager, so I didn't understand why that was. It was a house show, folks, which is just a show for that immediate audience. The main event, I know, was Hulk Hogan versus the Boss Man, and Hogan was defending his championship again. But this was my first time seeing a live wrestling show in person. I've seen it on television. Now I'm in the old Boston Garden, and I'm feeling the energy of the crowd. In all honesty, it wasn't the main event that made me a wrestling fan, and it wasn't seeing Hulk Hogan and the whole Boss Man thing. It was honestly the opening contest. It was the Leaping Lenny Poffo versus Steve Lombardi that hooked me in becoming a fan. And a lot of people were like, wait a minute, first of all, who is Leaping Lenny Poffo and Steve Lombardi? Well, Leaping Lenny Poffo, unfortunately, or fortunately, Leaping Lenny Poffo, first and foremost, some people in the 90s might know better as the Genius growing up. And in real life, he was the younger brother of the real-life younger brother of the Macho Man, Randy Savage. Oh, yeah, dig it. But he Leaping Lenny Poffo was had a gimmick where he would, when I saw him first, he was, reading off poems and he would write the poems on a Frisbee and throw the Frisbee out into the audience, and that was kind of a cool thing. And he wrote every single poem, they were all his own poems, which is original. And also showed that wrestlers, a lot of people have this misconception that wrestlers can't be smart or can't be artistic. They all think that if you're a wrestler, you're this kind of mindless mass of manhood or whatever else. You don't have, you're basically all you know is how to lift weights and eat and fight everyone, and that's kind of what you are as a wrestler. But there's so many levels to being a professional wrestler. And what Lenny Poffo was very intelligent, and he brought the artistic style where he could write a poem before doing a match. And I remember that poem. And Steve Lombardi, who would later become the Brooklyn Brawler, and then going forward, the Brooklyn Brawler would be just the guy that you would see that would lose to anyone he was going up against. We called them exhibition talent in the technical term is exhibition talent, but my uncle, he would call, as a wrestling fan, would call them a jobber or a nobody. With all honesty, Mr. Leaping Lenny Poffo would fit into that category if he was facing someone else as well. But to me, it was seeing how people interacted to Leaping Lenny Poffo and Steve Lombardi, that mean guy, and seeing how he fed off the crowd, how he showed his fluid motion in the ring, but also his mindset, how he hooked the audience. He became bigger than he was. And a lot of people may not remember how athletic Leaping Lenny Poffo was. He was really one of the first guys in the WWE, or WF at that time, who would really implement a lot of the moonsaults and the high flying and the cartwheels and so forth. And he was athletic. As well as he was athletic and he was intelligent, which is something that a lot of people would see as, not as how you would describe most wrestlers. A lot of people would think of the guy in the main event like Hulk Hogan, who's just going to be lifting his, saying his prayers and taking his vitamin, lifting his prayers, and whatever else he's doing to face the bigger giant. Exhibition talent people like Leaping Lenny Poffo and Steve Lombardi or the Brooklyn Brawler, these guys were also very developmental in making those stars into the stars that they are. I think a lot of people are quick to oversee those people, or quick to not paying any mind to the guy who is responsible for making the star that they are. In a wrestling match, you need someone to win and lose. And, with everyone who is a winner, there must be a loser. And there's definitely a way to lose and have a story to tell. And that's the ultimate idea of pro wrestling, is telling the stories that you can believe are a thing. And the problem is, like I said, today, you don't have someone right now that the fans have that connection with, like a Hogan or an Andre or anyone else who is super over. Now, granted, we have a lot. You could say, well, what about such and such? The fans go crazy whenever they hear that. Let me tell you, I've been to live shows since the 80s. And if you want to really compare the noise level between, someone like, I don't know, insert the person you think would be the person they would cheer for. Let's say Roman Reigns, for example, or John Cena. Well, John Cena's kind of not around anyway. We're talking about a modern wrestler, not one of the people who have already been established. See, John Cena, or The Rock, or people like that who are now household names, we don't consider them to be the people we're talking about, because they've already done their time in the ring. We're talking about the guys currently you watching on television, that wrestling fans today are watching. Right now, Roman Reigns, for example, who is the real-life cousin of The Rock and has a long family history, he is being billed as the most over and the most celebrated and the longest-running champion of modern time. Now, I want to be honest with you guys. Don't be fooled into thinking that he is the longest-reigning world champion in the history of wrestling. That's not true. Nor is it true that he's held it the longest in the WWE history. Roman Reigns has held it a grid along as time, many days and a lot of, many times. It's held it a long time, basically. However, he's held it. Hold on, let me tell you exactly what it is. I'll break it down for you like this. And yes, folks, these are statistics that you have that you can reach out to at any point. And I'm even going to tell you where I get my statistics from, because they're all legit. So, give me 1 second here, folks. I'm going to give you the exact kind of bit here. All right, 1 second here, folks. So, this is from the WWE's own website, okay? Their own website, 10 longest reigning WWF champions of all time. Now, I want you guys to really pay attention, because you need to understand that the difference between what we're talking about and what modern day wrestling fans see as something impressive. And I'm really, really struggling here to find this thing here. All right, so this article I'm pulling up, this is on the WWE's own website, 10 longest reigning world champions. I could tell, spoiler alert, Roman Reigns isn't even on this list, okay? So here, let me break it down like this. Hulk Hogan, the one we just talked about, he held the championship for 364 days. The Macho Man Randy Savage ties with AJ Styles at 371 days. 371 days for Macho Man and AJ Styles, the Phenomenal One, my former tag team partner way back in the day. John Cena, 381 days. CM Punk, 443 days. Pedro Morales, legendary wrestler you guys probably never heard of, unfortunately, but I do encourage you to check him out because he is part of history. 1,027 days as champion. He won the title in 1971 and lost it in 1973. Take that statistic, do the math. Number 4, Bruno Sammartino, probably the heart of New York City. One of the most over wrestlers of all time, Bruno Sammartino. And he held that thing for 1,273 days. And then Hulk Hogan again. Hulk Hogan, early 80s. Yeah. Now, that reign I just mentioned, Hulk Hogan, that 364 days, that was when he won it from Randy Savage after WrestleMania 5. And then he wouldn't lose it until the Ultimate Warrior, WrestleMania 6. However, Hulk Hogan actually is the third highest. His longest reign is 1,474 days. And I remember that because he won the title from the Iron Sheik in WrestleMania. And sorry, not WrestleMania. He won the world title for the first time against the Iron Sheik in Madison Square Garden. This was known to be when the birth of Hulkamania started. Before that, Hogan was a heel, or a bad guy. This was really the match that made Hulk Hogan who he is. So, he beat the Iron Sheik at Madison Square Garden and would hold the World Championship for 4 years, folks. He would, and that would be defending it against guys like Andre, Earthquake, Tugboat, Typhoon, Kamala, One Man Gang, and the list goes on and on. And he would hold that title 4 years, folks. And then we have at number 2, Bob Backlund. You guys probably never heard of Bob Backlund. You should have, however. He is one of the longest reigning champions of all time at 2,135 days. We're talking about years, folks, with those, not a couple months, not a year or two. And then again, when we talk about Bruno, that old record was when he won the title back. And that was at, what did I say for the other one? 1,237 days. That's 4 years right there that he has there. That's his second run with the championship, by the way. But his original run is the longest reigning world champion, 2,803 days. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a lot longer, is incredible as far as a distance goes, as far as a year. That's not a couple days, folks. That's not a year or two. That is several years the Bruno Sammartino held the world championship. All right? Now let me tell you how long Roman Reigns has held the title. So, folks, this is facts right here. You can hate it all you want, but this is the absolute facts. Roman Reigns, who everyone believes to have the most impressive, longest reigning championship of all time currently, has held the title now for 916 days plus. All right, folks, and you see the difference right there between you see the difference between, the people, the modern day people who think, well, Roman Reigns has been a long time champion. Yeah, for 16 days. And no, he's also not defended it every day. He is not, he's had help winning half of those wins to retain the championship. The guys who I just mentioned, they had their titles on their own for the most part. So I want you guys to keep that in mind next time someone tells you how long someone's been a champion. Before you stop believing in the hype as how long someone has been a champion, really look into the history of it first before you just take it at face value, because there's a lot that goes into that long reigning championship. And again, I'm not a fan of Hulk Hogan, but I also am not foolish enough to not understand that he was definitely a champion. And I remember this because in the 80s growing up, he was seemingly always the champion. And I remember the people he defended against, which is probably why I wasn't a fan of Hulk Hogan. I thought there were a lot of guys who were on the roster he should have defended it against, who never got an opportunity. Guys like Ricky Steamboat, who got a shot at the Intercontinental Championship, which is their secondary title, supposedly. Even though for some reason I feel like the person who holds the Intercontinental Championship is by far the better of the wrestler between that and the world champion, supposedly. Case in point, Bret the Hitman Hart was Intercontinental Champion. Granted, he was a world champion too, but he started out as an Intercontinental Champion. He was by far a great technical wrestler. Tito Santana. Tito Santana was an Intercontinental Champion, one of the most technically sound wrestlers alive. Never got a chance at the world title. Jerry Lawler never got a chance at any title at the WWE while he was there. So, there's definitely a thing. In the Macho Man Randy Savage, yes, he would go on to win the World Championship, but his first title was the Intercontinental title. So, it's definitely something to be said about the person who holds the Intercontinental Championship being a fantastic wrestler by virtue. And if you look at the history of it, yeah, there's a lot of great, talented people who held that title. And people who went on to become legends and, Hall of Famers and so forth. Paving the way for guys like Roman Reigns to do what they're doing now. One of the things I've been asked for to do on the YouTube show is to kind of do some history on these legendary people so people don't forget that, listen, wrestling history is just as important as any other type of history. And, it's as much as it's, sometimes it's hard to kind of look back and look at the people who I might not have been a fan of, but I couldn't take anything away from how popular they were because I was there. And critics don't always understand what the fans like, and neither do promoters. But here's what I'm going to tell you. As far as a tag team goes, in the 80s, a lot of people love Demolition, and I gotta say, I'm a fan of Demolition myself, and they've been celebrating their time becoming Demolition, all of last year and so forth. They are definitely one of the legendary tag teams of the 80s. They are the epitome of what a tag team is, and they are probably one of the most probably the most underrated tag teams of that era. They held the tag team titles for 3 or 4 years straight. Demolition did, before losing it to the Hart Foundation, or whoever they lost. I believe it was the Hart Foundation. And what matches they told? They were big, they were strong, they were tough, they were in your face. They told stories. They never hurt anyone in real life, but they looked like they could. They had the presentation. They came out with the hockey mask with spikes on them. They had that music, which I can still recite the words to this day. I felt that energy. I had that energy. Today, how many tag teams today have that chemistry and have that over with the crowd? But if you want to talk about popular tag teams, yeah, of course we know the champions that are Demolition, but how about the Bushwhackers of 1990? Now, granted, they're not everyone's cup of tea either. They definitely... Now, what was funny about the Bushwhackers, the tag team of Luke Williams and Butch... Luke and Butch, the Bushwhackers, who were cousins from New Zealand, and they were, people in the wrestling world knew them as the Sheepherders before they were the Bushwhackers. And the Sheepherders were probably one of the earliest catalysts for what hardcore wrestling would be. They were involved in matches and rivalries that ended up in bloodbaths. The Sheepherders, one of the most bloody and most violent tag teams to ever exist. And then they came to WWE as the Bushwhackers, these lovable guys from New Zealand who would lick kids' heads, eat sardines, and would come to the ring in a very bizarre manner, from most people would say. But let me tell you, I've seen it every time they came to a ring live. The crowd became electric. The kids loved getting their heads licked by Luke and Butch. Think about today, how many people are willing to have some grown man who you barely know lick their heads. This would never go over today. Fans would never let that get over today. And today we have tag teams that are kind of just two guys thrown together, if you're lucky. Barely to even matching. Back in the day, Demolition, they matched. They might paint their faces differently so that way they can tell them apart. But they had the same matching attires, the black and the silver studs, kind of a gimmick. The Hart Foundation, they had the pink and black. They didn't have the exact outfits, but they had similar ones, always pink and black. They would call it the Pink and Black Attack. And then there was several other ones that would, you knew they were a tag team because they matched each other. And they, had a tag team name that matched whatever the team was. Jumping Jim Bronzell and B. Brian Blair, the Killer Bees, right? I got to tell you, I used to enjoy the Killer Bees. Growing up, that was a cool thing. They were high flyers also, tough guys. And guess what? They were dressed as bees. They had a kind of a gimmick. They matched. Now today, you might say, well, what about guys like the New Day? They match. Yeah, well, the guys like the New Day, they're successful in the long run because they are one of those tag teams that match here and there. But for the most part, if you're going to sit there and compare the New Day to a team like Demolition, then you might have to look even deeper into the meaning of what a tag team wrestling is, what tag team division should be. Demolition, they were tough because people believed that they were tough. The New Day are out there as kind of comical relief, at best. You don't put if you want to if you want to have a tag team match where the crowd's gonna be like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be a good fight, then you put a team like Demolition against, say, the Powers of Pain, or Demolition versus even the Strike Force, which was at that point Rick Martel and Tito Santana, another great tag team, or the Rockers, Shawn Michaels before he was a solo, and Marty Jannetty. So you'd have teams like that, and today we have the New Day who match, yeah, but they're there to make people laugh, to comic relief. You see the difference there? If you saw a tag team match in the 80s, you saw a card that would have the Hart Foundation versus the Brainbusters, which is Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson, 2/4 of the original Four Horsemen, legendary tag team, and faction, the faction in which everyone compares to, then you don't look at things like that as a tag team. That is exactly what tag team is. Because it looked like these two teams who matched each other, who had a similar style to each other, and you knew they were a tag team by looking at them without having to guess. Today you got two guys who are thrown together, like I said, or they have a team like the New Day, who are successful in their own right, who come out there skipping and jiving and whatever. The believability factor to the crowd is they would believe that, Heart Foundation and Demolition or the Brainbusters would be a good fight. They want the New Day out there because they want a good laugh. That's the difference. Or they're entertaining. They want to make them laugh. You want to have a good fight? You get Demolition. You get a real fighting team. That's the reality of it, folks. That's not coming down hard. I'm not trying to, if you're a fan of the New Day and whatever else, I'm not taking that away from you. I'm saying good for you. I'm saying, yeah, they are over with that audience for what you think tag team wrestling is. And if you find that amusing, and if that's what you look for wrestling, is the jokes and the laughing, then hey, there's that for you. But in the same sense, you shouldn't be surprised when older fans who grew up with teams like Demolition and the Heart Foundation, they look at these modern tag teams and they're like, what are these guys doing? Why are they doing these flying around moves? Why aren't they just kind of beating the guy up in the ring? Because that's something the older crowd grew up with. So that's something I just want to, point out there. That people are aware of what that is and why that kind of line is drawn there. So there's something to remember there. So there's that. Well, folks, Monster Mania 53, we've come to that point now. Monster Mania 53 is coming up soon from Cherry Hill, New Jersey at the Doubletree Hotel. And yes, I will be there, folks. If you want to come down there, I'll be there all weekend. So if you want to come down and see all me and my friends down at Monster Mania, you're welcome to in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, at the newly renowned Doubletree Hotel, which is formerly the Crown Plaza Hotel in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, or as I like to describe it as, beautiful, luxurious Cherry Hill, New Jersey. It should be a lot of fun, a lot of good times. And you can get more information on monstermania.com. But let me just run down the crowd for you and have all the information for you. So again, it's Monster Mania 53 coming up this coming weekend, March the 10th through the 12th at the Doubletree by Hilton in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And of course, here is a list of the people in which you can look forward to meeting in person. Charlie Hunnam, the leader of Sam Crow of the Sons of Anarchy, making his very first Monster Mania Con appearance. We look forward to that. And as well as, we just talked about this individual somewhat, but The Undertaker, a wrestling legend in the business, Hall of Famer, is making his first Monster Mania appearance, and he is going to be there only Fridays, folks. Make sure you see him. Then you can get your information for The Undertaker either at the hotel, at the convention itself, or the Fitterman Sports, Fitterman Sports agency. You can get your tickets in advance there to meet The Undertaker on Friday the 10th. Also, in addition to that, you're going to get Rouse McGowan, the one member of the Charmed Girls, and several other things there. Megan herself, Emmy Donald, is going to be there. Of course, she was known for playing Megan in the new Megan film, which has caught the movie by storm. And we're going to talk about movies that make history and turning the world on its axis. David Howard Thornton, Emily McLean, Leah Voice, Elliot Fulham, and Damian Leone, the team behind the Terrifier 2, will all be in attendance in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. That's right, folks. Not only you got to worry about Megan running around the hotel, but also you got the little pale girl there as well, and Art the Clown. So if that makes you feel any better, there you go. You have that going on. But at least you got Elliot Fulham there, who's already shown he's not afraid of tingling with clowns. Damon Leone, of course, the director, filmmaker of The Terrifier. And we look forward to having them there, as they're always a delight to have at the show. Also, legendary actor It's extraordinaire. Producer, you name it, he's done it in Hollywood. The legendary Clint Howard will be in attendance, as well as Adrienne Barbeau from The Fog and The Crew. And come on, you guys all know Adrienne Barbeau. Brooke Smith from Silence of the Lambs, Bait Motel, and several other things will be making her occurrence here at Monster Mania. We are going to be having at Monster Mania the Sons of Anarchy reunion. Joining Charlie Hunnam will be Emilio Rivera, who played Marcus Alves in the Sons of Anarchy series, as well as David Lebrevia, who also played Happy Lawman on Sons of Anarchy. Theo Rossi, who played Juice on Sons of Anarchy, will be there. Theo Rossi. And if you guys are Charm Girls, in addition to Rose McGowan for Charmed, you have Holly Marie Combs, who will also be in attendance, as well as Rebecca Gayhart, who was in things like on Urban Legends, Santa Slay, Scream 2, Jawbreakers. If you guys want to sing along in a song that's not the Never-Ending Story or anything, Gabriella Pizzello is making her first Monster Mania appearance. I mean, of course, Gabriella will remember from Stranger Things as her and Dustin would rock out the Never-Ending Story. I'm going to say this show is going to be intense because you're going to get one of two songs stuck in your head. The Never-Ending Story, thanks to Gabriella, or The Clown Cafe because of the Terrifier people. And I got to tell you, both songs can get kind of catchy and will get stuck in your head, let me tell you. Joining Gabriel Pizzolo, however, will be also Eduardo Franco from also Sons of Anarchy. It's from Stranger Things. He will be also in attendance, so you can say hi to him as well. And of course, everyone's favorite Halloween, everyone's favorite little peeping Tommy, it's Quinn Lord, who was known for playing Sam in Trick or Treat, and among other things, but Sam and himself in person. And in the last show I was talking with Quinn Lord. I was telling him about how he was challenging one of our champions, and he has since lost to that champion. And I can't wait to see how he reacted to losing to our then Dream Masters BA champion, Grayson the Super Duck Russell. I look forward to hearing his review of that match. Actually, also, I look forward to hearing from the Terrifier people, as since I was the one who told them that they were going to have the match in December, they have had since, and we're going to see how they like their match. We're going to have a celebration of celebrating the final girls of the Friday the 13th series, 1 through 4, as Adrienne King, Amy Steele, Kimberly Beck, and Melanie Kinnaman will all be in attendance for Monster Mania 53. Scott Jackson and the guys over at Living Dead Comics will also be, Living Corpse Comics will be in attendance. We got the Yorkie auction, and of course Jackie Earle Haley, who was originally supposed to be there, unfortunately did have to postpone, as did Lauren Lavera, by the way, because she is currently working on a very exciting opportunity on a film, and we are very proud and happy for her, but she will be back in April. That, again, is Monster Mania 53 coming to you guys the 10th through the 13th 10th through the 12th in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, this coming weekend. And we look forward to seeing you guys down there. You can find out all your information at monstermanianet.com for more information. And just as a side note, I can't believe I have to say this. My wife has said that on the pages and so forth, people are still having to ask. So let me make this blanket statement just right here. If you have a photo op, you had better have a TV. You better have a pass to the show. You need to have tickets to the show in order to use it to get your photo op with the said star at said show. I think this is common sense in most societies. I think it should be probably understood. In order to get into the event where you're going to get the photograph made, you need a ticket to get into the event. that doesn't sound too illogical to me. That's just me because I've been doing these things and seeing these things for a long time. But for those people who cannot understand that, let me just make that statement. I'm sorry if that sounds like I'm being snarky. It's just, this is something that my wife has said that the owner, Dave, has had to say numerous times. A week or in a few days. It's the same question. So people, you need a ticket to the show in order to get the photo op. You need both in order to attend in either way. So please do so. And stop giving Dave and them a hard time over that fact, because that should just be common sense to most people. If you want to get something at a movie theater, if you want to go see a movie well, that's probably not a good idea. If you want to see a movie at a movie theater, you need a ticket to go to the movie. You need to buy a ticket to get in, right? And yes, you can get popcorn as well, but you need it in order to get to all the other things that go on in the theater. You need to buy a ticket to get into the theater itself first, right? That's common sense. If you want to go to see a baseball game, you can certainly go to the baseball game and partake in all of the events at the baseball game or the sporting event. You can definitely take it, if there's games you want to play, the souvenir stands. But guess what? You need a ticket to get into the game. Let's use some, proper sense. We're all smarter than that, people. Come on. This is the same thing. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. And we just had a show about this not long ago where we talked about that very thing that people were talking about that. And here I am having to do that again. So something to keep in mind, folks. So there's that. Well, I have to say that, I've tackled a few things here, and I'm very happy about that. I'm happy to have been able to do this show for you guys tonight. I've been wanting to do a show for you guys for all week. You can even ask my wife. I said, listen, I really want to bring these people a show. And it's not because, like I said, I don't have interesting stories to tell or I don't have, things I can share with you guys. It's because I believe in quantity over quality. I mean, quality over quantity. And I believe in, if there's absolutely something I need you guys to hear, I'm going to air those things. But if there's something, I'm not going to just put out shows just to put out shows. I'm not that individual. 2022, according to Spotify, I put out 99% more new original content than anyone else in my category. And I was upset because it wasn't 100%. This year, I'm going to make that 100%. And I'm going to make it original, and I'm going to meet all of those things. And granted, you might say, well, Jazz, if you're only doing a show here and there, how's that going to happen? I'm only beginning. There's going to be plenty of shows, plenty of things to share with you guys, and I do have plenty of things coming forward that I'm sure you guys are all going to have to hear or want to hear. I'm going to have amazing guests on this show again, and all in honesty, April is going to be our anniversary for this podcast, and I look forward to bringing kind of an anniversary show. I'm going to maybe try to bring the very first guest we've ever had on the show back here and see what's changed and how things have gone on since. This show started in 2020, and here we are, still here, and everyone's somewhat gone back to life before we got interrupted in certain things. And I'm happy that people are going back to doing their lives. Yeah, we do things a little smarter now, but in all honesty, people, we should have been doing those things anyway. So, there's that. And again, I am grateful that I have had that opportunity to slow down and take a look around me. It reminds me of a song I wrote a long time ago called Look Around You. I don't talk a lot around my old writings and things like that, but, a lot of the things that, I enjoyed writing. Just want to add this one little bit here. I'm talking about writing in general. Someone, had written me and had asked me several questions, back a little while ago. I answered some of those questions on Instagram for people. Some of them were very heartfelt, I got to say. One of them I almost broke down because I was so touched by a follow-up email from someone who actually saved the icons of the F4L show on YouTube. But I want to just give a recap of something that someone asked me, and that's, what do I enjoy about writing? As they know, I like to write, or what my favorite things are to write. One of my favorite things about writing is the fact that I'm able to take the reader on an adventure, and I, as the writer, get to paint the image, give them the character, and give them escape from whatever they're doing in their world. And for a little while, let them care about or worry about something that isn't their own personal things. But if they can pick things out of that writing that helps them in their world somehow, then I know I did my job. I have told this story before. As someone who's in the entertainment world, I am very critical of myself. Or in general, I'm very critical of myself. I never understand, or I never see what everyone else does as far as being something big. I'm late to the party sometimes to those little pat on the back moments. But I remember one time I came across a book of my writing, and I want to say, sadly, this book no longer exists. It seems like every time I move, I'm always losing something in a move. And tragically, I had started collecting all of my short stories from the time I was 13. Well, not just short stories, but all of my writings into this big binder. And I had it starting at 13 all the way until I moved at this particular time. It was full of short stories, poems, songs. I had an award-winning poem that was published when I was a senior in high school. My English teacher, Miss Layton, believed in my writing and embraced my creativity, and she would enter my writings into various contests, sometimes without telling me until after the fact, just to encourage me to keep writing, as I used my ability to escape for myself, to create a world for other people to enjoy as well. But ultimately, it was a way of me, bringing some moral lesson or showing that anyone is capable of overcoming anything. That's kind of what I did. And I remember coming across this book one time. I was reading one of these short stories, and I remember thinking to myself, oh, this is actually really good. I'm getting into this story of how well it's written. And the character is like, oh man, this character, I'm feeling for this guy, and this is great. And it was at the moment when I was done reading it, I realized, wait a minute, I wrote this. This is something I wrote when I was, 16 at that point. And I was like in my early 20s at this point when I was reading this short story. And I just remember thinking to myself, wow, I am a pretty good writer. If I was taken by this story, and years later, I'm reading this story, I'm like getting into this as if it's like a Stephen King novel, but it wasn't. It was something I wrote myself from my own mind, I guess you'd say. And that's a feeling as a writer you'll never understand unless you get to do it. And to see the joy of others enjoying seeing something you've written, that's an amazing feeling as well. And it makes me happy whenever I hear someone say that they enjoy something that I've written, and that to me is why I like writing. So that was my last point of the evening, and I want to say thank you to everyone who has listened to the show. I want to say stick around, there'll be more to come. We do have Jaden Brooks coming back on the show on Tuesday, and I did say that Jaden normally is pretty good about getting back to people, but also we have to understand he's a very, very busy man. So it's kind of hard sometimes to keep track of everything, but yeah, Jaden's going to be coming back on the podcast this coming Tuesday, the 7th. I'm trying to find out, maybe we have a time? Well, let me see if we have a time theoretically. I don't want to give you guys false hope, but you're going to have to go to my social media where I will update you guys and let you know exactly. But look, this coming Tuesday, the 7th, we're going to have Jaden Brooks coming back to the F4L Headquarters podcast. It'll be the first face-to-face meeting, as we're going to both, not only get to hear our delightful voices, you get to see us as well across our social media platforms on YouTube, channel as well as everywhere the podcast is heard. This will be epic, folks. So I hope you guys enjoy that. I think you will. I think he's a bright young man, and he's the first of many people who we're going to be bringing forth for you guys, okay? And also I have some other things going on next week as well. Can't tell you about one of them, but I can tell you that I am planning on doing a show on Wednesday night, just before we leave for Monster Mania. It's kind of a pre-Monster Mania warm-up as we're getting ready to leave, as we leave early Thursday morning for Monster Mania 53, and we'll be going down to Cherry Hill, New Jersey, which I look forward to seeing each and every one of you at this coming weekend. So, folks, with that, I want to say it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you and host you to the F4L headquarters. And now it is time for me to let you guys do whatever you got to do, and may all your dreams come true. Peace from the F4L headquarters. Sean Jazz Stevens. Again, you can reach out to me if you want to be a guest on the show, or you want to come and show your own stories on the F4L headquarters podcast. You can reach me at WOW Dream Matches. That's DRE. That is WOW Dream Matches. DREAMMATCHES at gmail.com. Again, that email address is WOWDREAMMATCHES at gmail.com. You can find me on Instagram at F4L Icon, SEANJAZZSTEVENS 1 on Instagram. You can find me on YouTube on the Icons of the F4L. And I am your host of the Icon, Sean Jazz Stevens, saying, may all your dreams come true. Peace, everybody.